Welcome to this ACAL webinar, everyone. Great to have you with us. I'm really excited. ACAL would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognises their continuing connection to land, waters and the community. We pay our respects to them and their cultures and to elders both past and present. For those of you who do not know Ros, she was the 2013 Australian Training Awards winner, Excellence in Adult Literacy and Numeracy Practice. She's very passionate and a very real doer in the adult literacy section. And so I'm really looking forward to what she's got to say today. And I know that she's soon off overseas again to explore some more options. It'll be really interesting to hear what Ros and her team are doing with Indigenous and culturally and linguistically diverse learners, trainers, mentors and other support staff in the remote Northern Territory community of Yuendumu. This is really important work that is informing us as a field to better address the development of teachers, trainers and mentors and adult literacy and numeracy skills in Indigenous communities. Thank you, Ros. I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks. I'll just right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so I'll just begin by just talking a little bit about where I've been for the last couple of years in Yuendumu and just trying to give people a sense of where we are. If you're looking at the more mainstream map, you can see here that, and I'll just do my red pointer very slowly, like I've been learning how to do it. You can see that Yuendumu is northwest of Alice Springs in the Tanami Desert, and so we're in Walkley country, and there's 4 communities in Walkley country: Yuendumu, Yirrkala, Ladjamanu, and Wallawa. And I'm actually based in Yuendumu, which is the largest Walkley community, and I think possibly one of the largest, if not the largest, remote community in Central Australia. And here we've got the Aboriginal Australia map, and you can see that Walkley country is here in this big green space where I'm showing you. We do have a welcome from somebody, so Anna, can I just ask you to show Eddie's video for us, please?
Yep. Welcome to this session that Numeracy is doing with you, Mop. And have your interest in what you're doing is very important. Your literacy is very important for you and me, and thank you for interest in this session that you're doing with Numeracy.
Thank you. You'll see a picture on your screen now of Eddie Robertson. I would like to acknowledge Eddie for 2 reasons. Firstly, because he's the chairman of the Walkley Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation. He's co-chair of the board here, and Eddie's had too many positions in community to mention. He's been working since he's about 15 years of age, and he has memories of being in the Waverley walk-off in the days that Gurinji people were fighting for their land, and he's probably held every major position in Yuendumu and across Walkley country. And we're extra proud of Eddie because he's just been named Northern Territory Senior Australian of the Year. So we will be barracking for him on the 26th of January when he goes to Canberra. So I'll just leave that beautiful image on, actually no I won't. I'll just flick through some more. These are just random photos of Yuendumu as I just talk a little bit about the work that I've been doing. I came up here about 3 years ago to work on a workplace English language literacy program with the Walkley Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation. And they have mainly Walkley staff at WIDAC. I'll just, if you hear me say WIDAC, or any of the other presenters that are with me today say WIDAC. That's the acronym for the Walkley Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation. So they have many Walkley workers, and that's critical to the success of the organisation. but also critical to the success of WIDAC is the reporting and compliance requirements, which are all in English language. So initially while I was here I came up to volunteer, but I did end up doing most of my work here with adult learners during that time, and that was the genesis of the WELL project. And when I came up here to work on the WELL project, I was also contacted by the Walter Jaru College to provide adult literacy services for basically anybody in the community that needed support. And from that, as well as the WELL project, there was a real growth or connection or engagement with learning with people. And we were given an old a space in the old in an old shop here, which is actually the storeroom, and we were given that place to actually establish an adult learning centre in Yuendumu. And that was really successful because it demonstrated the engagement that the institute needed to actually see, because they'd actually established learning centres in other communities, and that's quite a process, and each of those centres took several years to be established, but there was not going to get, probably the great necessity for the engagement and the negotiation, because that was then demonstrated with the Adult Learning Centre. And during this time, WIDAC had applied for funding to build a learning centre. So while we were working in the Old Learning Centre, they were busily building a new learning centre, and you can see on your screen there what that looks like for people at the King. And that's the side using the learning centre now. So what that actually led to was a tripartisan agreement between the Walter Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation, Bachelor Institute, and the Walter Education Training Trust. And the Walter Education Training Trust, just broadly, their role is to look at education and training requirements in Walter communities and channel some of the funding from the gold mine here on Walter country into those sort of projects. So that's now led to a full-time staff member being allocated through Bachelor and WET and WIDAC in the Learning Centre. This year my role has been a little bit different. I'm actually working on what we call a PACE program, and it's Parent and Community Engagement Project. It's national funding through the federal government, and it's really about connecting community, parents and carers of anybody aged between 0 and 19, engaging in this education or learning or being more connected to their community. So this has actually enabled me from the Learning Centre and the WELL project days of having very obvious literacy interactions with people to actually support people in different ways on the PACE project. And an example is that is we often have facilitators coming into new external facilitators or service organisations running programs, and quite often the language and literacy is not thought about in relation to how that information is presented. Almost always it's in English language. It can often be in printed literature or on slides, and there's so much of that people actually don't understand because it's very text-based, and it's also very English language. Another example is people not understanding government law, so talking to people about what the law really means for them. Another example of that project where I'm supporting literacy is we've got quite a few strategies to actually encourage young people into school and learning, and one of those is people are very well connected. So we send out text messages in the morning and to remind people that get up, it's time to go to school, the school bus is coming around, and then in the evening to say that it's time to go to bed. And I did mean to put one of those text messages on those slides, but those text messages are actually written in English and Walkley, and they're also supported by having images. So if people not understanding either of those languages. They can usually tell by the nighttime scene that it's time to go to bed and the morning scene that the school bus is coming around. But that's just a bit of background about what I've been doing. And last year I actually supported some people through the certificate foreign training and assessment here in Yuendumu. Because we do have a lot of external facilitators, as I said, and it's really important to build capacity in community, because the real strength in having facilitators from community is that they already have established relationships with people. So there's already a lot of trust there. And so you can see a picture of these three people here, and I'm not sure if anybody here from Adult Learning Australia, but Rebecca, Alexis and Dave there are actually watching a webinar put on by ALA a couple of months ago on the Australian Core Skills Framework. So I've given some thought about how I can support these three people in their roles, and I also have been very interested in getting experience in delivering the Foundation Skills Set. Some of you may be familiar with that. So you can see on your screen there's the three units that are in the Foundation Skills Set. Most people are probably more aware of the 411 unit, but there are a few other units in that around accessing support and resources and knowing about where to find things related to literacy to help with delivery, and also how to actually integrate foundation skills into vocational delivery. So rather than me do all the talking today, I've asked Rebecca and Dave and Alexis just to come along and really introduce themselves, and then sorry, I thought there was something wrong with the phone, but I think everybody's right. Then actually talk about how they've applied the learning in their particular cohort. So I'm going to ask Dave, do you mind coming over? This is Dave, and what I've asked each of Dave and Alexis and Rebecca to do today is just explain what their role is in community, tell you something about their learners, and give you an indication of what they believe the ACSS profiles of their learners are.
My name is David Bauer. Hi everybody. I'm currently a youth development worker for the Walkley Youth Development Aboriginal Corporation, also known as WIDAC. Prior to this, I was a media worker on the PACE program that Ros mentioned, and I was also running the Learning Centre in 2013. I dealt with people in the Learning Centre. My learners were community people. We sort of offered not accredited training, but just basic help on anything that second language learners would find a bit more difficult, like bank forms, email, technology kind of stuff, anything bank related, and just documents, all that kind of stuff. And I also did a little bit with building and construction trainees who are undertaking a certificate 2 in building and construction with the New Future Alliance around Yuendumu. So they involve going out on the job site and helping people with basic numeracy, reading a tape measure, all those kind of things. These people are probably around the Australian Core Skills Framework levels of 1, at most 2, also pre-level 1. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, thanks Dave. Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself and explain what your role is and tell us a little bit about your learning?
Hi, my name is Rebecca. My learners, well, I've been in Yuendumu for nearly 4 years at PAW, which is soon to be a Madra Walkley Media Association, and that was basically doing admin and managing. And now I'm at the school, and my role is the vet trainer / pathways coordinator. I'm really enjoying that. My learners are mostly the school kids, so they can be from pre-level 1 up to level 2. Yeah, that's it.
All right, thanks, Rebecca. And Alexis.
Hello, I'm Alexis.
my role at the moment is I've been in Yuendumu since February this year, and I also ran the Learning Centre for a while, the old Learning Centre. My role now is ITAS tutor, and I'm working with. I'm also working at the school as an admin assistant, and I'm working with 8 of the assistant teachers as an ITAS tutor. I'm supporting them through a Certificate 3 in education support. I'm also working with one Walkley man who's doing a health Certificate 4 in health studies. And I suppose my learners would be low to a 3 level. Yeah.
And Alexis, can you just tell people how that support looks? Is it, do learners, are they doing it online, or do they receive hard copy materials?
Okay, they receive hard copy materials. They have a workbook, and we sit down and go through the workbook. Everyone's at different levels, different stages. So we go around and have a look at what the tasks are and what the reading is involved, and break that down for each person.
Okay. And if you can see this beautiful painting behind me, I meant to tell you when we first started. It's Judy a Napananka or Nakamara? Rebecca? Napananka? I think it's Napananka, a Judy Watson painting. She's a very famous artist, and it's really, I hope that you may not be able to see the detail, but it's very beautiful. Okay, so the plan was for everyone to, of course, have the skills set finished at the end of this year. But my learning as well with the delivery of the skill set is that it's probably more rigorous than I expected. Sorry, my computer just went down. It's a little more rigorous than I expected, and working with 3 learners who Dave works shift work, Rebecca and Alexis have varying work roles and at varying times, so that's been a bit of a challenge. So mainly now I'm meeting them individually, and they're squashing this in all around the other things that they do in communities art. So Alexis will be finished, the 411 unit by the end of this year. Dave and Rebecca did the 411 unit last year as part of their Certificate 4. So they'll be finished the 412 unit at the end of this year, and they'll start the 413 unit at the beginning of next year. So I'd like to ask each of them now to actually talk about some strategies that they've each used, and clearly you can see that they have, whilst they have similar cohorts of learners, they have different cohorts of learners, and I know from my personal experience with David, Alexis and Rebecca, they all come from very different backgrounds themselves and very different work backgrounds. So what I asked them to do for the second part of the webinar was to try and describe how they might have applied what they've learnt in their study so far. So Dave, can we go back to you? Can you just sit back? We've just got heaps of butcher's paper around the room here to help everybody, so you might hear some crinkling of paper. Dave?
I think the main thing that I've picked up after doing these studies with Ros is just how much literacy is in everyday life, and how much big chunks of literacy can be daunting to someone who's a second language speaker or someone with low ACSF levels. So signs are a big thing that's in around community as well, that's probably confusing for a lot of people. And for instance, we had a mandatory reporting the other day, and there was a few Walkley people, or there was one Walkley person in particular in there, and after the reporting, the council, or the woman who was running it, actually just handed out these form and just expected everyone to fill it out after the lesson consisted of just big blocks of writing on the board, and it just occurred to me how much probably went over his head. Also, I've started doing this, a representation of a trainee agreement. So as my role as a youth worker, we have JARU workers, which are people who are from 16 up to 25, and they're mainly Walpi people who help out. And we've got like a guideline specifics for people, anyone who wants to become JARU. And it's just it's 13 lots of rules and regulations, but it's big text-based it's one of those things that would be confusing for a literacy learner. So I've been given the task to create it into an engaging iTalk story, which is a touch-based interactive interface on a computer where it's all pictures, and and pictures are good in any language as far as I'm concerned.
So I know that you can't see from there, and you don't probably need to be able to see the detail, but you can see the big block of text which people are expected to actually read through as part of their induction process. So Dave, can you just describe, using the iTalk software, how you've made a couple of frames, I believe, and worked with one of your Walpi co-workers, what those frames look like?
Yeah, we made the first 3 rules for the JARU training agreement with one of the Walpi workers. The first one was Yappa and Cardia staff must work together. So instead of the writing Yappa and Cardia staff work together, I had a picture of Minga, who's a Walpi worker, and Michaela, who's a Cardia person who works for White, and they're just together. And then with the caption of Minga saying Yappa and Cardia staff work together, and you just touch it on the screen, which prompts the voice recording over the top of the picture.
And are you doing that in Walpi and English today?
Yeah, both. So it's bilingual as well, with English and Walpi subtitles, so it caters for all learners, I guess you could say.
And I think I noticed the other day you were just putting 1 or 2 words as subtitles, so you kept the text
fairly brief, yeah, fairly simple, so I can sort of keep up with it.
Yeah. So I guess maybe the mandatory reporting document could be your next challenge.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Dave. Okay, Rebecca. Can you talk about what strategies you've applied or what you've learned from the study?
Yes. Like Dave, I also went into sexual behaviour workshop. It was Cardia and Yappa workers. Cardia meaning white workers and Yappa meaning Indigenous workers, all in together. So we had a really huge group of people, from highly educated teachers to people that assistant teachers who are Walpi who don't have a lot of learning, all in the same room, different genders, etc., as Dave was saying. And there was just a lot of context. Every time they threw up a new workbook, it was like, oh my God, you know, it was really so wordy.
The PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint, yeah. And also they were just giving a lot of words at people. A lot of them were very specific, so it was completely just over the top of so many of our workers. And they also did things that were culturally wrong by us. One of the questions they asked was what was the word that you used for penis and vagina. And in that Walpi setting, you can't do that in a mixed company. So that was just really not good.
Know your learners.
Know your learners. I've also been doing sport and rec, helping to facilitate that. And my learners are 16 to 42, so a couple of school students and quite a few community members from Waidak and from the greater community, football teams, softball teams, and that sort of thing. And after doing this literacy and that, I've been helping the presenter by, when they do brainstorming, we write it all up on the board, either through dot points or mind maps. Because the spelling and vocab, English spelling and English vocab, can be quite limited by our learners. So I had a great Walpi understanding, but not always a great English understanding. And by myself being in there, and by Waidak workers being in there, we're able to split off as well and be very specific to the genders. So the female, I can help the female learners, and we've got a male worker from WIDA to help the male learners. So, yeah, it's just doing that, as well as encouraging peer support. So some of our school students have got higher literacy, but don't understand concepts. They can't relate an English concept into roleplay. So we've got a lot of that around as well. So there's older students with their literacy, and the older students are helping to explain it bilingually. So they're able to take English language, explain the concept in roleplay, and it just makes it a much better learning experience. And we actually retained, we started with, I think, 18 students, and we retained 15 by the end of the third day, which is pretty much unheard of in community.
I'd say in my time here, that's probably been the best outcome for vocational training, to have those kind of, that sort of retention. And Rebecca, firstly, it's probably because sport and rec is, people really connect with that, because a lot of the Jarrah youth workers, that's useful for them, but also because you actually know your learner group and you're able to connect people who have stronger skills with people who need support. So that's really knowing your learner group through probably your understanding of foundation skills too, but about how you can actually share that support. You're just not doing everything, but you're supporting the vet trainer, you're supporting the learners, and you're giving higher level learners actually more responsibility as well.
Yeah, and knowing their learning style. To look at some more practical work.
Yeah.
And then everything else. We're also very explicitly copying, so those that have very low level literacy is actually taking a workbook and talking to them, so you're getting their words down, but you're very much just copying it, then they're able to copy you, but, you know, the explicit copying, I suppose.
So when you say that, you're providing a model text, so to support writing, so they are filling out this form, whatever this form might be, you have one that's exactly the same.
Yes.
And you're showing them not only how to write the script, but actually where in that form to put it by really scaffolding them quite strong.
Yes, yes, but it's still in their works, which means it's still their work.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Rebecca. And Alexis, would you like to come over and talk about how you have, I think we've got, you've got notes there, have you, Alexis? Yeah. Okay, so Alexis, can you tell us how that you've applied some of what you've learned in the foundation skill set to your education support?
Okay. Thank you. I suppose what I've learned is, one thing I've learned is about contextualising, and what I mean by that is using real workplace documents and authentic materials from that skill, from that industry, within the assessments that we do and in the training that we do. For instance, I was doing an LLN skills check assessment, creating one of those, and I went through all the I was creating one for the assistant teachers, and so what I did was went through the documents that they would most likely use in their workplace. There's one here, like an accident and injury form that they have to learn how to fill out. So I used that for writing to see what kind of levels they're at with writing and where their skills gap was. And also, so things like that, using real work documents. The other thing I suppose I could say that I've learned is how to unpack units of competency, which were sort of like hieroglyphics to me at first, when I first saw them. And I've done one here where we had to colour code colour codes all the performance criteria in a community services certificate. And so that was fantastic because I'm a pretty visual learner anyway myself. That allowed me to have a look at, break down what was required in those units as far as the core skills, reading, writing, all that kind of, and just looking at the implicit and explicit language in the contained in those that let you know how much, what kind of level the learner has to be to actually do this certificate level. So that was great, being able to a lot better.
And so even when I just add Alexis, when Alexis worked through that, it was really so much, I haven't reinforced to people about the necessity to get it all right, because I certainly don't get it all right, and I don't think one of my strengths is the ACSF. But the important thing, probably the most important thing with that exercise, as you could see from all the colour on the unit of competency, was that it really demonstrated to Alexis the implicit challenges in units of competency around language, literacy and numeracy.
And the other one was, being able to give, I think I read an article on feedback, giving feedback to the learner, and that helped me a lot because I used it with one of the assistant teachers when I was in a tutorial session with her. It made me realise that I was sort of not really getting specific feedback that was useful to the students, what they were talking about in the article. You know, like instead of just saying, oh, you're doing really well, or that's great. That's not really useful to the students. But looking at where she was at with looking at tasks and actually understanding what the question was, and feeding back to her what she was doing correctly with that, and what she needed to do to be able to use the dictionary to look at the words or break down the language so that you can actually understand what the question is.
So instead of saying it's good, that was good because you've used the dictionary and worked that out independently, or you've managed to write those 3 sentences.
Yes,
on your own.
You've used a paragraph, or that's fantastic. You're using a paragraph. Just being a bit more specific in the feedback and giving them some useful hints as to what they need to build into their learning and what they're doing. Yeah, where they're at with that, and how to get there. Actually, how to get from A to B.
Right. Thanks, Alexis. I know that there's probably some questions there, but I'm just focusing so much on the webinar that I haven't really had time to look at them. So I apologise for that. I'm not doing a very good job of multitasking this morning. I'm just so thankful that all the technology has worked so far. The last thing that I asked Dave, Alexis and Rebecca to think about was if they could identify the main challenge, or just generally what do they think has been the main challenge in their work or in the future, in their reflecting on what they've been doing. So Dave, can you I think Dave, when we spoke yesterday, I know that when I asked you, you said, have you learnt very much? And you said you hadn't learnt very much, but then you said that you did think about literacy all the time. I think that's a great start. I'm just going to prompt Dave because he's been out youth working all night. You did also mention that the strength of bilingual and the challenge is developing a literacy, but also developing a role-free literacy, or not at the expense of role-free literacy. You mentioned that.
Just my awareness has been raised. Just like Rebecca said before, you just got to know your learners and just be aware that every time that you ask somebody to do a task or you want to work together with someone, you have to remember that they don't know the English language as well as you, and you have to sort of cater for all learning groups and all learning levels of people.
So does it make if you're doing something with a Jarrah youth worker, do you have to allow exercise?
Leading by example kind of is a lot better than trying to read something. So I think pictures are very good, and just making it very relevant to what they know as well is very, very useful. So if you can sort of hands-on approach has been the most effective, I find. Yeah, a lot more effective than writing on paper.
Dave, did you sit in any of the sport and rec delivery?
I didn't.
Okay, all right. But you did mention the other delivery regarding mandatory reporting for the challenges to try and make sure things meet the needs of the learners in every situation.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All right, thanks, Dave. Rebecca? Rebecca, what are the challenges you faced or you think are you more aware of now that you've been doing this work?
So much. LLN, I'm thinking LLN all the time whenever I'm in a group situation or whatever. And just also the way different cultures think. You know, I've never had to think outside my own culture. And as Lex said, you know, out here there is no make-believe. So you've got to give real examples. You really have to contextualise absolutely everything. So it's just the different way of the Walpole culture. And part of that is also their active listening is not the same as our active listening. So you're not getting the same triggers from all the different learners. You're not getting the eye contact. You're not getting the nodding of the head or any of that. So you kind of walk out not really knowing whether you've understood things at all the time. If you're looking to our culture, silence also doesn't mean they don't understand. You know, on the same hand, you've got both. You know, silence doesn't mean they don't understand. It also doesn't mean that they do. So it really is important to build good relationships so that you can then talk to the people afterwards and actually make sure they know what you were just talking about or what they were learning. So, yeah.
Just if I can add on to that, I guess what we are expecting people to do in a learning situation that's really dominated by the English language and our ways of doing things is that we expect people to enter into arrangements or social contracts that are really, they don't know the rules of, and it's really beneficial for us, I think, to be in that situation. And I can think of a very clear example. I learned a lot from this at the beginning of the year when we had a community consultation about what community actually wanted in the parent and community engagement program. And I facilitated a meeting with Eddie Jumper Jimper, and it was to find out of the family group, each of the family groups were there, what they actually wanted in the parent and community engagement project. And I, as the only cardia person in that room, entered into a social contract that I had no idea about, and I really felt at sea. And it's a really valuable reminder, I guess, of what we expect from our students. Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. Alexis? So just while Alexis is walking over, Judith, I know that you're there. I saw your name. Can you just say yes if it's okay, put in the chat room, yes if it's okay if I mention our project? Alexis, can you tell us about what you see as your challenges?
I think my challenges, there's a lot. I have a lot of challenges. But I like what both Dave, I relate to what both Dave and Rebecca were saying, and also about just picking up on what Rebecca was saying last about evaluating and getting feedback from students. So yeah, I just for me the challenge is reflecting on myself as a trainer and whether I'm stopping and just taking a minute to ask people, are you understanding this? So evaluating the training as you're going, and trying to get feedback as much as possible from the learner, as to how you are as a trainer too. Like I think we were talking about, do you talk too much? Or I don't talk too much. I know that, but am I giving them? Am I using the right language for them? Am I working with the learner's needs, and trying to get a picture of how it is for them, and whether I'm delivering it in a way for them to understand and get something out of it. So yeah, I'm turning more on that. But so that just reflecting on how I am as a trainer, and whether I'm in touch with the learner's needs and what's going on for them. And the different culture and language does pose a real challenge from where I've come from in my own education and culture. So, and bearing that in mind and trying to have an exchange with students. I think having like they teach me their language, and so I'll endeavour to use their language, Walkley language, in the lesson. So I think that creates I don't know how I'll put that, but that creates some sort of rapport and better understanding between us. So so incorporating their teaching at the same time. So that's right. Teaching and learning. If that makes any sense.
Well, it does, Alexis, and a lot of the comments that you made would apply to any group of learners. I mean, it's really quite general. And I guess I'm not sure if I mentioned at the beginning that for all of the Walkley people in community, and certainly all the learners that Dave, Alexis and Rebecca are working with, English is their second, third or fourth language, so children go to school speaking Walkley. And I think, generally speaking, non-Indigenous service providers have been slow to take up language. There are a couple of fluent speakers in Yuendumu, and there are people who have had a long history. But generally there's an expectation that people will do most things English language way, and I know and people do certainly recognise that as a necessary part of their economic participation, or inside of Yuendumu with government services. But I think it does actually show a lot of respect when people actually try to use the Walkley language and incorporate it into their lessons. So well done. Before I summarise, I just would like to tell you about a project, and Judith Mackay is in the audience today, and Judith is from the Human Services Training Advisory Council in Darwin, and she came out and volunteered at the Learning Centre last year for a week, and we've had a really strong collegial relationship since then, and Judith's been a really important person for my work out here. I can pick up the phone at any time and ask her anything. And Judith is one of the Human Services Training Advisory Council is one of the stakeholders on a national project to develop some learning materials for the community services qualifications for Indigenous learners, so that the learning materials can scaffold higher level learning into diplomas and degree level, and Judith rightly said that also needed some enabling units, and so to be developed. And the real value of Judith asking me to contribute to that is that I'm in a community that is, community services is, one of the largest employment industries in Yuendumu, and so we're actually looking at developing this resource based on talking story, and you heard Rebecca say you need to have stories in the now and real-life examples. So we're actually producing something that can be used on an iPad and that is very contextualised to remote communities at Certificate 2 level. So it's great to be a part of a project like that that really takes into consideration learners, and then I can actually use all of the people that are in the cohorts of Dave, Alexis and Rebecca as part of the consultation and trial. I think I have a summary slide. Thank you, Anna, for putting that on. So today you've been introduced to people in 3 different roles: a youth worker, a trainer/mentor from the school, and an ITAS tutor. And they share a broader cohort of culturally and linguistically diverse learners. They have supported people in vocational training, and they have also supported people in informal and non-accredited training. The key messages from them in terms of the way that they've applied what they've learned in the skill set so far is Dave, who's used it to create a bilingual resource that scaffolds English language literacy and Walkley literacy, because many people in the community are not literate in Walkley, and that's really important for them to actually develop their Walkley literacy skills. We've heard from Rebecca, who talked about some strategies she's used, including team teaching, using mind maps, dot points, encouraging peer support, and also providing really explicit models when she's supporting writing. And we've heard from Lex, who talked about unpacking language in units of competency and also unpacking the language in questions in vocational training, contextualising all her delivery and making sure that authentic text and materials are used, and also providing explicit feedback to her learners. The challenge, Dave talked about developing English literacy, but not at the expense of Walkley, but in conjunction with developing Walkley literacy as well. And that's a huge challenge for a young person who is really only just completed their Certificate 4 and is now undergoing a skill set. But the recognition that this is a real necessary in community is commendable. Good on you, Dave. Rebecca talked about underpinning the literacy, language literacy, numeracy with Walkley culture, and Rebecca's been around Yuendumu for a little while, has a really, really strong understanding of what people require, and is very, very Yaka focused. And I've seen Rebecca thinks about absolutely everything she does to make sure that her learners are well supported. So they're very lucky. And Alexis, the newcomer, who has a very quiet, gentle, lovely way with the education support ladies, and I've seen her work in the Learning Centre and the way that the women respond to her. And I think that possibly there's a lot of talk about reflection in vocational training and higher education, but it really needs to be a conscious part of training and education. And I think it's a really important point that you've made there, Alexis. Well done. I'm not sure how much time we have left. We've got 5 minutes. Jenny, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Would you like to answer some of those questions, Ros?
Okay, I'll just have a look, flick through. I'll go backwards.
Are you able to use the iTalk story to develop the person's literacy? Was the question from Judith.
Okay. Yes. Look, I'm glad somebody mentioned that, because I was thinking about it when Dave was talking about it. We've actually used the iTalk software in the old Learning Centre, and we made a whole heap of very short, explicit stories about how to log onto the internet, how to reset your iPhone, how to log into, Commonwealth internet banking, and I'm not sure if people are familiar with iTalk, but as Dave explained, you use a series of photos and you can talk behind the photos. It's actually a very good way of encouraging people to do digital storytelling because there's not as much exposure as standing in a camera, in front of a camera and videoing. It's actually quite it's a much safer experience to put the photo there and then think about what sort of, what you want to say behind that photo. And of course, by actually making sure that you have text on the front of that, you're actually scaffolding people's reading as well as their listening and speaking skills. Louise,
Beth also asked, Ros, if there's been any post-testing with ACSF levels.
No. Look, not at the moment. I think people are just probably pretty swamped with doing their job. So look, no, the answer is no, not at the moment. So I can't give you any information there. Louise, I said it was rigorous, or was it onerous? I suppose, Louise, when I said that, I'm thinking about David and Alexis and Rebecca are coming from their very initial understanding of literacy. So I wouldn't say I've actually taught these units very well. It's around a harried and hectic schedule of all of us, and I've said a couple of times, this is not examples of good teaching practice that you're seeing from me today. But I think that I really want people to understand every step of the way, and I've got this amazing luxury that I live very close to the people who are learning. I have personal relationships with them. I'm able to put a lot more into probably what's required than if somebody was sent out a workbook. And to be honest, I think that's what's required for people to have an understanding of what's in these 3 units. So I hope that's gone a little way to answering your question, Louise. Alexis, can you... That was a little while ago, Alexis. So if anyone's interested, iTalk is I as in iPhone, iTalk. It's downloadable from the internet. It's free. And I suggest if you're interested, just go on and have a look at it. You might be able to find some use for it with your learners. I think that looks like we didn't have a lot of questions, which is really probably nice. And we've got about 1 minute left. So I'd just really like to thank Dave, Alexis and Rebecca for taking part, because I think the nice way to say it is I coerced them into being a part of today, along with everything else. Come on, you're going to go in this webinar. I could have sat for an hour and talked about it, and I just think you probably would have been all asleep in the first 5 minutes. I think it's really important to have a trainer's perspective, and in fact, I actually went to the Vet Network conference in September this year. I usually mainly attend literacy events, and I went to a training conference, and I found that very, very interesting. I thought that people were very, very interested in learning more about kind of things that we've discussed today. So I think there's a whole new audience out there. I think that might just about wrap us up.
All right. I'd just like to say thank you very much to Ros, Rebecca, Dave and Alexis for the presentation, and also to Anna Musgrove and Don McDowell for organising the webinar and for all of you for attending. I think it's been really interesting to see, and I know support very much some of the comments that have been made on the chat. It's great to see literacy and numeracy support being integrated into real life in many different contexts and different ways. So thank you very much for your presentation. I just ask all of you, please take some time to complete a short survey that will give us some information about how to present webinars more. So thank you very much, everybody. It's on the screen for you now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ros and team.
Thank you, Anna, if you've got time, I think Eddie will say something.
Okay.
Literacy is everybody's business.
I can't hear. Has anybody got sound on this?
What Eddie just said was literacy is everybody's business.
Oh, excellent. Totally agree.
Okay. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I hope it's been really valuable for you. Thank you.